Today I'm giving you guys a 1v1 tier list for the best civs in Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition. Now before we get into the tier list, just remember this is all my opinion, and I want you guys to comment down below where you think I was right in the tier list and where you think I was wrong, and maybe some adjustments and tweaks to the tier list, but let's get into it. Alrighty, so starting off the tier list, we have the USA civ. I would like to put USA probably about the A tier. I feel like they used to be an S tier, but I think with some of the new civs we've had, there's a little bit more counters to USA. But I think if you let USA boom in a 1v1, it's definitely going to get out of hand, and they're going to be able to mass up a bunch of artillery, and you're going to really struggle to be able to beat them. Next up, we have the Aztecs. Now, I'm going to put the Aztecs in about a B tier. I won't lie, it's definitely not a civ that I'm very experienced with. I think they're a pretty average civ. They certainly do have some strong units with the Eagle Knight Runners, and they have a decent economy and overall army composition, but I think if I were looking at these two matching up, I'd be saying that I have more faith in the US player winning the game. Next up, we have the Brits. Now, I think the Brits, in my opinion, is just a straight up S tier. They are absolutely nutty, especially with the housing boom. I think it is probably the easiest boom in the game to do, and it is definitely probably, honestly, I might even just come out and say it.
I'm gay.
I reckon they have the best boom in the game. And obviously they have very strong units. Just an overall extremely solid civ. I gotta put them in S tier, there's no doubt about it. Coming up next, we do have China. Now China is one that I would like to ideally put in the S tier. I think they're an S tier civ, but I am also in the lower ranks obviously. I'm probably around about 1200 ELO, so in my rank, they're definitely an S tier, but I think in the higher ranks, they're probably an A tier. Maybe a B tier, but I still think they're very, very solid. They're definitely quantity over quality in terms of their units, but they have very solid shipments as well. I'd say they're definitely better early on in the game. I think the later it goes into the game, other civs like USA and majority of European civs probably would be able to outpower China, especially with the training times. Coming up next, we have the Dutch. Now, I gotta put Dutch in A tier as well. I think they have a very, very easy to use boom with the banks, and I think they're a bit of an underrated civ. I think they're actually pretty easy to turtle with because you do get the skirmishes in Age 2, which I think is absolutely huge. So you can definitely get a strong turtle on, and I think if you don't shut down Dutch early in a 1v1 game, they're definitely going to get out of hand, and most likely I feel like they'd beat majority of civs later on in the game. Coming up next, we have Ethiopia. Now Ethiopia is definitely my least played civ along with Hausa, but from what the little bit of gameplay I've seen from them and from what I've heard from them, I'd say they'd be about a B tier, maybe a C tier. I think they're just not as strong as Hausa with their units and their boom. Now we have the French. I'm going to put French A tier. I think they're just overall just a solid civ. Nothing that they're really outstanding in, but there's certainly nothing that they suck at. I think they have some very strong native shipments, so if you want to go with natives, definitely the civ you want to go for. Solid economy and pretty strong unit comp as well. Now we got the Germans. Now, I think we're going to have a very stacked A tier, but I do want to put the Germans in A tier. In my opinion, they have the best cav early on in the game. Very, very solid attack. Pretty shitty in the hit point department. But I think if you can get a big mass of these, it's going to cause your enemies lots and lots of trouble. And for the players that are really good at their micro and like raiding, this is definitely a civ to go for. I absolutely hate when you're versing like a German player and they're just really solid with the micro. So definitely got to put them in A tier there. Now we got Hausa. Now, I have heard Hausa are quite the solid civ. I think I have one game with Hausa, so I am not someone to really judge on them too much. But I think we're gonna I'm gonna put them in A tier. But honestly, guys, please leave your comments down below because I don't feel like I'm experienced enough with this civ to really have a say on it. But I just know that they're, from hearing what people have said, are a pretty solid civ. So I'm going to leave them in A tier, and comment down below your thoughts on Hausa and where you think it should be and where you think Hausa should be placed in the tier list. Now with Inca. Now I've played a little bit more Inca of recent, so I'm going to put them in B tier. Honestly, I just don't think they're that great of a civ. I feel like if you can attack them early on before they get all their concha houses out and get a boom going, they're pretty easy to beat, although they're definitely one of the stronger turtle civs. but I feel like if you get some solid European civs in there, they're pretty easy to beat. Coming up with India, I'm tempted to put them in the C tier, but I might leave them in B tier. I think, B tier is good. I think a solid India player can be an absolute pain in the booty, but I feel like India is also one of those civs that takes a while to get good at, and they have a bit of a skill gap from some people that play India. They're gonna really struggle because I would say it's a harder civ to be able to master. Now we got the Iroquois. I think I'm gonna leave them in a B tier as well. Now they have a very solid, like extremely good rush in my opinion, because you can just spam out tomahawks and archers because it's pretty much all food based on the rush, and just chuck a few people on wood and you have a very, very solid rush. But I feel like if you aren't successful with your rush early on, you are absolutely done for when it comes to fighting any sort of European civ or any civ with some solid artillery. Alright, now we have Japan. Now I'm very tempted to put Japan in S tier. I think they've got to be one of the best civs, and I think we're going to send it. We're putting them in S tier. Now Japan has a very solid rush. They have a solid boom. I think they're literally solid in every department that I can think of. If you guys have any other opinions, obviously comment them down below. But if I'm trying to get my sweaty on, Japan's definitely a civ that I will be playing. Now we have the Ottomans. I'm also going to have to put Ottomans in the S tier. I think that eco is lacking a little bit, but I don't think I've ever lost with the Ottomans when it comes to playing early on. Like, they have the most solid rush in the game, in my opinion, with the Janissaries and Abascans, and you also can send in a cav shipment for raids. Janissaries and Abascans is a very, very hard army comp to beat early on because it's strong against any sort of infantry. With the Abascans, they're just going to shred out all your infantry. And then they're also very strong against any sort of cavalry as well with the Janissaries. So I feel like they're very hard to counter. I think if you're able to get to Fortress Age and get some artillery out, then you're probably going to be able to beat them. But I'd say if you're playing in Age 2 against Ottomans, they're pretty much impossible to beat. Next up, we have probably my favorite civ at the moment, and this is Portugal. Now, looking at a few other people's tier lists, they always have Portugal in these bottom tiers, but in my opinion, they gotta be one of the most underrated civs in the entire game. Now, I've been playing a decent amount of Portugal recently, and I've watched some pretty solid Portugal players as well, and I figured out that I've been playing them wrong the whole time. You got a 10-10, just don't worry about housing in the first age and just rush to the second age and send out that gold shipment, and you can literally get to the Fortress Age under 6 minutes, around about 5 minutes 30. But I would put these guys at a solid A. I will agree that they are very, very stingy in the second age. So if you're trying to play them in the second age, there's a fair chance you're going to lose. But if you are smart and you get them to Fortress Age, and you make sure you get some trading posts so you can just spam out shipments in the Fortress Age, you're definitely going to win, my friend. They are very, very strong in the Fortress Age. Next up, we have Russia. Now, Russia, I would like to say they are a solid civ, but for now, I think I'm going to have to leave them in B tier. Now, my reasoning behind this, because I know lots of people absolutely love Russia, but in my opinion, Russia, they have a solid rush, but then again, it's very counterable. Like, if you're playing as Ottomans, you literally have the most ideal unit comp to beat Russia with the Abascans and Janissaries. They're not really going to stand a chance against your army comp. I think the only way Russia ever really wins is if they just get lucky that the other civ is trying to boom or just isn't prepared for the attack. But I'd say they are in the higher end of B tier. I haven't really ranked them within the certain tier. I might do that at the end of the video, or I might just leave it because it's very hard to distinguish which ones are better, but they definitely would be the top of A tier, top of B tier, maybe an A tier. Next up, we have Lakota. Now, Lakota, I'm gonna have to put them in a B tier. In my opinion, there's no civ that's absolutely garbage in the game, apart from maybe one civ, which we'll get onto later. You might already know who the civ is, and I kind of despise them. just a little bit, but I'm trying to get better at that's it. But anyways, Lakota, very, very solid units, but also very expensive units. I do like how you don't really have to make any housing, and I think in someone that's got very good micro, this could be one of the best civs for 1v1. But in my opinion, they're easily countered by some of the European civs. Now we got the Spanish. Now I don't want to put them. Well, this is a tricky one, my friends. I don't think they're garbage. Well, the C tier is like just bad, like underwhelming. D tier is obviously garbage. I would probably have to put them in a B tier. They have decent units. Like, I think if you can successfully get to the Fortress Age with Spanish, they're very, very solid. But I think majority of people playing Spanish know that if they get to the Fortress Age, they're gonna be pretty solid with the lances and stuff. But yet again, even when they're in the Fortress Age, everything is so bloody expensive. So I think they're just an average civ. They definitely do have solid army comp if you can get out a decent, like, massive units of like lances and some cannons and maybe some skirmishers and dragoons. If you can get that army out, there's a fair chance you're winning that game. But then again, I feel like they're just not quite as good as some of the other civs, so I'm going to leave them in B tier. Alrighty, now we got Sweden. So I'd probably say they're about an A tier. They're very, very solid units, and I do like how they can get the cannons within age 2. They are a little bit expensive for like how good they are, but I do understand that they're a bit more expensive because you are getting them at age 2. But if you can get a mass of cannons and Coralines, the only real counter is if they like get lots and lots of cavalry, then they might be able to outdo you, or if they're in the Fortress Age with some Colvins or something. But they're very, very solid, decent army comps, and a very solid economy as well, so I just got to put them in an A tier. Now we got Mexico, a civ that I haven't played a lot of but know a little bit about. I'm going to put them in B tier. I think they got some solid revolutions, and I do really think their playstyle is extremely unique and quite cool. But I think that they've had a few nerfs over their time, and I'm just going to leave them in B tier. I feel like they're just average. Now we have Italy. Ooh, this is a tricky one. Ooh, I'm gonna leave them in B tier as well. I think they're just overall kind of meh. Alright, so now Malta, I'm gonna put them in underwhelming C tier. I think when it first came out, I low-key thought this was gonna be the new meta, but I think they've kind of flattened out a bit, and me and the community have realized that they're just not the best civ. They have some solid shipments, but I think their army comps just aren't the greatest and can be fairly easily countered by majority of civs in the game. I think they need some buffs. I do quite like how they're kind of like a turtley civ with their big ass cannons, but overall I don't think they're up to the standard of any of the civs in here, and definitely nothing close to any of the civs up there. If you guys made it up to this part of the video, you're actually goated. But leave your comments down below on your thoughts on the tier list and like where you would kind of put things in the tier list, because I'm always interested to know what people's opinions are. And I'm definitely not the most experienced when it comes to this game and ranking, but from someone that's around the low thousands in the ELO, this was my opinion. But I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.